computer. So that should be up and running. But we do actually have like a quick presentation. It's literally just like pictures on a screen that goes through each of our sub-assemblies. So we can start with that and kind of get you a little bit more familiar. And we'll just go like top down with the rocket, or if you have any questions like or specific areas that you want to check out, I can go ahead and do that too.
Great, sounds good. Well, you guys can start with your presentation then.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this pulled up. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, can you see my screen right here?
Yes.
Awesome. Let me make this bit bigger. Okay, cool. So first, starting off with our payload, it's pretty simple. It's just like a boiler mass. We 3D printed a shell and we just filled it with concrete and didn't go all the way to the top. So we put some like spray foam in there and we just epoxied the lid shut. So that's like the CAD model of it on the left. Middle is like us kind of peeking under the bulkhead of it, and the image to the right is it fully inside with all of the threaded rods and the nuts and everything. Do you have any questions on that so far?
Nope, looks good so far.
Okay, cool. And next is the eBay. These are some like CAD drawings of it. Jack, if you want to pull up actually, I'll just do that stuff later. We'll just do the presentation first. But here are some CAD drawings of it. We have 2 RC3 missile works altimeters and 1 featherweight GPS. And Edison, you want to talk about how they're powered?
They're just powered by 18650 lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, and on the eBay, we have like 2 ejection canisters, 1 for each of the RC3 altimeters on there, and this is pretty much looks exactly the same on the other bulkhead on the bottom. Any questions on that?
What are the connectors that you're using between your batteries and your flight computers?
1 second. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, what kind of connectors are you using between your batteries and your computers?
We're using JST SYP connectors. We chose them because they have those knocking connectors and the they're polarized, so like we can't plug them in. We chose them, yeah, so we can only plug them in one way. But
right.
Yeah, they're JST SYP.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move on. Oh, here's
yeah.
like images of it along with the batteries and like the wiring diagram as well. So I'll just leave that on for like 30 seconds, or I can go ahead and go on to the next sub-assembly whenever you say.
Looks good. Think we can go on to the next one?
Awesome. Now, here we have our air fakes is what we're calling it as a club. So we were trying to create air brakes, as you probably could tell from our first and second reports, but that kind of fell through because of time constraints that we had. So we had a backup plan, which was pretty much to copy and paste the payload assembly that we have, and then just like put some mass in there. So this is pretty much exactly like what you saw in the payload assembly, but it's a little bit shorter, just because we had less, like the total length of our air brakes was less than the total length of the payload coupler. And this air fix just goes inside of a coupler tube with the very similar bulkheads as the payload. So any questions on that?
No.
Cool. And here's a little recovery diagram for our drogue. So on the top here, or on the forward end, is our electronics bay, and on the aft end is our booster tube. And this booster tube is actually where the air fix is. And then we just have a drogue parachute. This is made out of Kevlar, so we didn't really need to put it in any kind of parachute protection system, or we don't anticipate to put it in any parachute protection system as of right now.
I'm assuming the lines then for the parachute are also made out of Kevlar. This is my
Yeah,
assuming.
I double checked them and they are made out of Kevlar. And Ray, do you want to like confirm that if you saw that on the website that you got it from or anything?
It wasn't listed on the website, but it does seem to be made of Kevlar.
Gotcha. And I can go ahead and move on to the main diagram that we have. So over here we have the shock cord, and then one end is U-bolted with like a little loop in the middle. Not quite in the middle, but like a bit of the way, significant amount of way from the payload, which is on the forward end, and then the aft end is electronics bay. And we have our main parachute that's going to be inside of a deployment bag because this one is not made out of Kevlar. Any questions on that?
Did you make your own deployment bag or did you buy that commercially somewhere?
That was bought commercially from Rocket Man.
And is it made out of Kevlar or some flame resistant nylon, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it's made out of Kevlar as well.
Okay.
Nice. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's kind of all we had for our slideshow. Now, is there like a specific way that you would kind of prefer to see this? We could go just top down and show you everything. Or if there's another way that you want to do, we can do that as well.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, is doing some sort of either bottom up or top down, and we'll just step through each component, take a look at it. I'll probably ask you a bunch more questions in here, actually seeing your finished rocket. But maybe before we do that, I am kind of curious. I heard that you had a test launch recently.
Yeah.
And that went pretty well for you guys, minus it seems like your main parachute deployed when you were not expecting it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
Okay, and so could you just first maybe tell me a little bit about what you've changed to mitigate that? Just because at the competition, it's really not ideal if we're having the main parachute deploying at apogee, just for those really long drifting distances. So what have you changed to help prevent that from happening again in the future?
Yeah, for sure. So we got decent amount of help and advice from like level 3 people on site at Tripoli, Center Virginia, and from our advisors as well. It was a pretty simple fix. All we did was increase the shear pin sizes of our main side. Originally, we were using 256 shear pins on the main, but we bumped that up to 440 shear pins. So those are kind of what we're using. We're using a total of 4 shear pins on the main and 4 shear pins on the drogue. We didn't change the shear pins that we had on the drogue, which were 256 shear pins, but we, to remedy like the separation at apogee with the main, we bumped up the size of the shear pins.
Okay, was it, do you know what caused the separation at apogee? Was it just the forces from the drogue separation, or did you actually have main charges going off at apogee as well?
No, it wasn't. We actually saw the main charges go off like as it was drifting down, like we could see the smoke from the black powder. So it's not that. What I think happened is because our payload assembly is pretty heavy. I think it's around what, like 11 pounds. Yeah. I think like literally just like either the shock from the drogue separating or just it hanging down there kind of made the 4 pretty small shear pins to shear earlier than we wanted it to.
Yeah, that makes sense. So since you've increased the size of your shear pins, have you redone your ejection charge testing for your main parachute?
We have not, but that is planned. We're going to do it in late May or early June at the very latest. But we're just going to, we don't anticipate that to be too difficult to do. Since
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you're planning on doing that since you're upping this.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, yeah, that was kind of my main pressing question. So yeah, up to you if you want to work top down or bottom up, and we can just kind of take a look if you have some way to maneuver your camera to get a nice close-up view of everything.
Yeah, Jack's got his iPhone logged in, so he's gonna open that up. Also, I can turn my mic off on my computer if you want to turn your mic on.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Hello. So starting at the top, we have, well, I'll keep this here. So we have the nose cone just standing aside right now. Yeah, maybe turn the bottom down. Okay. All right. So we have the nose cone standing aside right now. This is just for how we've laid out the rocket down here. But what was not clear from the slideshow that we just showed you is that our payload is contained within a coupler tube that goes inside of the nose cone. So it's about half in or 4 inches inside of the nose cone, and the rest of it is contained within the payload tube. You can see here where we just redid the shear pins. And so we've kind of left it sitting inside, but if I take my camera and go in here, you can see where our threaded rods are fixed in place since we epoxied it. And essentially the payload, this shell slides along the rods into place, so we can pretty easily remove it. This lid, this bulkhead goes on top, and it is we take some nuts and washers and screw it down, and everything is fixed in place that way. So day of the competition, we can pretty easily disassemble and show that our dimensions are the correct size. Then immediately below the payload, like we described in the presentation, we have the main parachute. The connections are not clear from how I'm standing with my camera, but you can see the loop that we have in the middle for the quick link that attaches to the lines of the parachute, and then this free quick link that would go inside of the payload tube to the lower or to the aft U-bolt on the payload coupler. Oh, and please stop me at any point if you have questions.
Sure, I do have
Um,
a question on the
oh.
nose cone, if you want to go back to that real quick.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering if you had anything else in the nose cone, or is it just the payload that sticks in about 4 inches and that remains connected onto the rest of the rocket, the rest of the flight?
Yes, it is just the payload and I guess this handle on top of the forward bulkhead.
Okay, so that's just a handle, and you're not going to have any load bearing items connected onto that U-bolt.
No. Oh, yeah. So this is that's a good point. We ended up cutting off the prongs of a U-bolt and just leaving it epoxied like this. This is only so that way it's easy to remove.
Got it. Okay.
Because it's kind of hard. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So then on the other side of the payload, though, you do have a connection point to your shot cord. Is that correct?
Yes, it is a U-bolt that is epoxied in. It's just not visible right now because it's inside the body tube.
And you said epoxied in. Does it have any nuts on the other side as well, holding it in place?
Yes.
Okay.
It has nuts and washers on both sides, and it is fixed in place.
Okay. And what size U-bolts are you using?
2.5 inches.
Oh, sorry, I meant like the diameter or the thickness, I guess, of them.
1/4 inch.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So back where we were at the main parachute, the forward end is attached to the payload. The aft connection is attached to the eBay, which is right here. The images that we showed of the electronics bay in the slideshow are much prettier than it actually is. So, Edison, I don't know if you want to talk through the
I can
electronics bay.
I can just show the electronics bay. So it's kind of the same thing as what we showed in the presentation, but in front we have these two RC3s, one primary and one backup, and right below it there's our Federate GPS tracker, and then on the back side we have our three 18650 batteries. So the top two are for the RC3, and these are 18650 and a lithium ion, and the bottom one is a 3.7 volt 18650 lithium ion. And then mounted on this arch, there's 3 screw switches. It's because each one of these are independent battery systems, and each battery connection is made by these aforementioned GST connector.
Okay. What is the that backing, that sled material of your AVBAID made out of?
They are the backing is made out of ABS plastic, which I believe has like a glass transition temperature of 200 degrees.
Yeah, it's above boiling.
Yeah, it's above the temperatures we expect to see in New Mexico.
Sounds good. Yeah, wanted to mainly make sure it wasn't out of PLA because we have seen PLA get a little bit droopy out there at the competition, so don't want that happening. Okay.
And
So
also to note, like all of our 3D printed components, we made sure to print them all out of 100% infill. So it just makes sure they're like strong.
Okay.
Are your switches labeled on the outside of the rocket as to which is primary, which is backup, and which is GPS?
Yeah,
Yes, so we have them labeled on the switch band. It's not very easy to see through my camera lens, but they are.
Okay.
Okay.
We are also planning to paint, so we will label again after painting.
Sounds good. And for your switches, I encourage you to have some sort of extra screws that you're bringing with your competition. Every so often during like transportation or something, those screws may come loose. It would be a shame if you didn't have a replacement. So make sure you're bringing some extra screws with you for those guys, just in case you need them.
Awesome. One thing to clarify, so the diameter of the U-bolts is 3/8 of an inch, as well as the rods that the eBay slides down. I had said that they were 1/4 of an inch earlier, but they're 3/8. The threaded rods that the payload slides down are 1/4 of an inch.
Sure.
But anyway, so now moving down
I do
beneath
have a
the
couple more questions
um,
on the eBay real quick before you.
eBay. Wait, did you say anything?
Yeah, just a couple more questions on the AVBay before you move on.
just increase the volume.
On my phone.
I'm wondering for your battery mounting, could you tell me a little bit more what those are made of and how those are supported so there's no chance of them moving around during flight?
Did you want to talk about that? She's asking how the batteries are mounted.
The batteries, they also 3D printed. These are 3D printed cases. So these also printed out of ABS plastic. I don't have a screwdriver right now, so I can't remove it. But essentially, how this works is that there's one lid that comes off. It's a slide mechanism, and then our battery is placed in. The wires run out of one side, and then after the knit is knit in, we have a like a M3 screw. It's kind of hard to see, but M3 screw that retains it, just so we have like positive connection. And we ensure like the batteries don't move around. And when I shake this like eBay said, like I don't think
Nothing new.
the batteries don't move around.
Mm-hmm. And you flew it in this configuration for your test flight.
Yes.
Do you know, was your test flight, did it have like similar G loading to what you're expected to have at the competition flight?
I think it did. Henry has both the simulations up, and I think she can confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it had very similar G loadings.
Yeah, I'm asking mainly just because I want to make sure that those batteries have no chance of moving around and shifting. Because if they do, they could cause damage in your AVBay, unplug themselves. But they do look pretty secure, and especially if you've test flown before and you didn't see any problems during deployment and during the boost. I'm not too concerned with that then.
Yeah, so I just pulled up the simulations, and actually the predicted max acceleration during the test launch was predicted to be more than what it's actually going to be at Spaceport.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Then another question on your arming holes there. I'm assuming this isn't a problem, but I'm gonna ask anyways. Are those in line with your rail button, or are they offset so when your rocket is on the rail, you can still access all of your arming holes?
We thought of that thanks to Ben and Elaine, and so they are on the other side of the rocket.
That is very good to hear. And it looks like you have venting then for your AVBay just with those holes that you're using to arm your screw switches, is that correct?
Yes, we have one additional hole on the other side. So there are 4 total, but yes.
Okay, Sounds good. And then on your the bulkheads of your av bay, since those are going to be taking some load, are you using some sort of washers or anything like that on your threaded rods and on your U-bolts?
Yes. So we can show you the U-bolt for the Av Bay looks pretty much identical to the one on the eBay, except for the fact that this, I mean, on the payload, except that this one has the ejection charge wells. You cannot see the washers because they are epoxied over, but there are nuts and washers on both sides for the U-bolts. And when we slide the threaded rods through these holes, there are nuts and washers on them as well.
Okay. And how thick is that fiberglass?
It is 3/16, but it's layered.
Okay.
So I think twice that thickness. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to make sure that you're also getting some washers on those threaded rods. I always recommend fender washers just because they get that bigger surface area to distribute the
Okay.
load. So take a look at that. I know your bulkhead's getting kind of tight. Sometimes what I do with the fender washers, I just sort of clip it using some metal shears. You can often clip them or like a Dremel, but just to help get a nice big distributed load over that bulkhead for when your parachutes are deploying.
Okay. Okay, so moving down beneath the electronics bay, we have the area where our drogue chute is held. You can see here we have the 256 shear pins still in, just to find them a little bit easier, and they attach to the E-bay in here. You can't really see the holes, but that's where the brake is for the parachute. That's where the drogue is held, and the drogue attaches to this bulkhead, this U-bolt, which is on top of the air fakes assembly. The air fakes works exactly like the payload. Let's see, that's gonna roll. It's a little bit easier to see because this is lighter and easier to hold around, but it slides in the same exact way. This lid is epoxied on top. It's filled with concrete and foam, and it weighs about 2 pounds, almost exactly. And it fits into here. Initially, we were anticipating that maybe we could, if we worked on it a little bit longer, we could switch out the air fakes for the real air brakes assembly. So we did plan for the body tube to still break here. So this coupler still serves as an attachment point for the booster section of the rocket and the rest of it. And so there are there are 3 screws on the forward side and 3 on the aft side. And I guess this is another spot where we can show how our weld nuts are attached. So the screws, anytime something is screwing into the body tube, it's screwing into a weld nut that we have epoxied on the inner wall of the body tube. We had an issue with them popping off from shearing. So we did some extra sanding and then kind of coated everything in a new epoxy. And nothing fell off during our test launch. And so yeah, that's down from the eBay to the air fakes. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, what kind of epoxy are you using there to attach those?
Proline 4500, the brand that Wildman sells.
Sounds good. And then just to confirm, your payload is staying inside the coupler, and that coupler is bolted on both sides of the body tube. So that payload's never coming out. It's always staying assembled onto your booster, correct?
Yes, it's always staying in, never comes out. Yep.
Okay. Where does then your drogue parachute attach to? Is it on the top of that payload bay?
Yes. So it would be if the whole thing was closed, then this bulkhead would fit on top like that. And this end would be facing the forward direction in the rocket.
Okay.
And then moving down the rocket into the booster section of the body tube. This, I guess everything is kind of contained within, but we have 3 centering rings, and our motor mount tube is all epoxied inside. We mentioned our rail buttons earlier. I guess we made sure that they were aligned by using a 1515 rail guide that we found in our workshop. And they are epoxied into place pretty well. We don't have any concerns about them coming off. Our body tube was pre-cut by Wildman, so the fin slots were done for us. However, we did notice that one of the slots was about twice the thickness that it should have been. So to kind of account for that error, we had our club had from years ago some carbon fiber that we had access to, and we opted for tip-to-tip reinforcement, and it held up pretty well during the test launch. And then down here for the retainer, we're using an Aeropack. Yes, okay, yeah. We're using an Aeropack retainer, and that is screwed into the aft centering ring and then epoxied over and epoxied to the bottom of the fins and to the body tube inner wall. And it worked very well during the test launch.
Oh, and we're using JD Weld high heat.
Yes. Yes, so,
Did you say that your rail buttons were only attached using epoxy, or they also screwed in?
oh, yeah, they are also screwed in.
Oh.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we use T-nuts for the rail buttons.
Yeah.
And then I think just another question, a good thing to review, your shock cord and your parachute looked all pretty good, but could you just confirm that the whole length of the shock cord and all the parachutes, they aren't excessively burned or charred anywhere, that your parachutes don't have any holes in them?
Yes.
So this is, we'll just show like the,
Maybe is it easier if
this
I go
is
like
like, this is what it looks like after a couple ground tests and the test flight. And we looked alongside the full length of the shock cord. We didn't find anything that was too concerning in terms of strength or durability. And this is a brand new parachute, so this obviously doesn't have any damage. Because we use different parachutes for the test flight since these didn't come in time. And same thing with the main. We don't really see anything wrong with the shock cords, especially the areas here that are reinforced with Kevlar. We made sure that these sides were kind of closer to the black powder. And we don't see any like holes or charring or anything on the rest of the length of the shock cords. And this D-bag also wasn't used for our test flight because again, the stuff didn't come in time for our test flight. So we had to use other parachute protection and parachutes. So those are good.
Sounds good. And are you doing anything, or I guess more, maybe a better question would be, how are you packing all of your shock cord into your rocket airframe to ensure that it's not going to become tangled?
Emery might be able to speak more about that, but what we've done for the test flight is we've done kind of like a Z folding or S folding. I don't know what people really call it, but it's kind of like zigzagging it inside of the parachute or inside of the airframe too. But if there's, I know Emery did a lot of the packing, so if there's anything else that you did with that.
Yeah, I kind of just while I was putting in, I would like neatly like I guess pull it out to make sure everything was straight, not tangled, then stuff it in, make sure everything's lined up, nothing's like knotted or tangled or anything like that, and then just keep folding it over on itself until the whole thing was in.
Sounds good. And do you guys have then possession of your motor for the competition?
It's purchased, but it's going to be delivered by Wildman to New Mexico.
Okay. Same for the casing as well, or do you have that on hand?
Yes, we do have the casing on hand.
Okay.
yeah.
And the floaters too.
Sounds good. I encourage you, if you haven't already, make sure that that is cleaned out. I've seen teams before that get there and it's not cleaned out, and it's a little hard to clean those out in a hotel room or the desert. So
Yeah.
your life a lot easier if that's ready to go.
Yeah, we don't even have to worry about that because we used a different casing for our test flight, and that's been cleaned out already. So yeah.
Sounds good. If I'm being honest, you guys are looking in really good shape. I love that you did a test flight too to validate your systems, found issues, and you've made those changes to address them. So yeah, if anything, just make sure all your shot cord attachment points are well reinforced, kind of trace how the load will travel through. Make sure you're adding washers. Like I said, I like big washers wherever possible. I don't think I have many more comments about the rocket. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions regarding safety of the rocket?
I don't have comments or questions regarding safety on the rocket. I had like a question about like, I guess, logistics
Yeah,
of the
That's kind
competition.
of the next thing I was going to jump into then, if no one has more on the rocket.
Okay, awesome. Wait, does anyone else have like questions about the rocket? No? Okay, the question I had was, when would we know, or like, when would the people that would be presenting the podium session be announced? Like, is that something we'll know well in advance? Or is that more of like a day of or like day before type of announcement?
Honestly, Ben might have a little more insight into this one, but from my experience, could be probably around a week or two before the competition. So you're submitting your proposals for the podium presentations. I believe it's tomorrow, if I'm
Yeah,
correct on
yeah.
that. But it will be a few weeks before, you're not going to find out like the day of or the day before, but I would expect likely sometime in the week or two before, just based on prior competition experience. Ben or Elaine, if you have anything else to add on the timing on that one.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you so much. That's kind of the only question I had.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any other questions related to competition operations, what to expect to get there? Because this is all your first year competing, correct?
Yeah, it is. And we're pretty excited about it.
Good. Yeah, it's definitely, you're gonna have a great time. So I mean, you guys got some great mentors that I'm sure have probably been answering all your questions along the ways on
Oh, yeah.
exactly what you can expect down there. So you guys are in good hands.
Mhm.
Just a couple other like housekeeping questions that I have for you. Does everybody going on the trip have a AAA account or AAA membership?
Yes, I confirmed that before we put in our pre-registration.
Okay, great. And did you get your pre-registration submitted?
Yes, that was submitted like May 3rd or something.
Awesome. Good. That is good to hear. Another thing just I want to make sure you guys are aware of is at the competition, specifically the safety reviews, checklists are very important. And so I know they're a requirement in your technical report, but I want to remind you of how important your checklists are. So first, I guess, did you have a checklist that you were using during your test flight operations last month?
Yeah, we did have a checklist both for the ground testing and the test flight. And kind of a question I had was like, what, I guess, main events should the checklist be preparing us for? Like, is it just going to be like assembly of the rocket and the actual launch, or is there like other things that we should include in the checklist?
I like to think of a checklist as if you could hand it to someone on your team that, like someone who has a very general rocketry knowledge, but maybe not a lot of experience exactly with your rocket. But you could just hand anyone on your team the checklist and they'd pretty much be able to follow that checklist and do everything starting from prepping the rocket for flight, bringing it out to the pad, arming it on the pad. And then what happens if something goes wrong on the pad, right? What if maybe you have a misfire of your igniters? What happens if you recover your rocket, but some of the charges haven't gone off? So pretty much every sort of like step along the way, it should be there, because you're going to be out of the competition and you're going to be in the middle of the desert and it's going to be really hot. And it's going to be really windy and you're going to be really nervous and excited. And you're going to be like, what's next? And that's what the checklist is for, is to tell you exactly what's next. So I encourage you not just to make a very thorough checklist, but to do a practice with it, like do a practice integration. Like in college, I made fake ejection charges using sugar instead of black powder. Like I did every single step of the checklist. And I still do that for all of my own rockets that I make now on my own, because it's so helpful when you might hesitate or have a moment of doubt. Just look at the checklist. It'll tell you what to do. And then, like I said, it is really good for those mishaps. What happens if you need to take your rocket off of the rail? What are your steps to disarm it? What happens when you go to recover it, like I mentioned? How do you disarm it? How do you make sure it's safe before everybody else approaches? And so, sure, it's maybe not going to include every step like travel from the flight line to the pad, but everything else that's important for getting your rocket up in the air.
Got it. Thank you so much. That helps a lot with like clarifying what, like how extensive or how in detail it should go.
Yeah, and if you're ever kind of like, should we add this to the checklist? The answer is yes, add to the checklist.
Okay, got it. Perfect.
They very likely will be reviewed during your in-person review. I know a lot of teams get sent back for not having a complete enough checklist or missing steps or operations or things along those lines. So make sure you bring it with you when you're at check-in and going through your flight safety review in person.
Got it. Got it.
And Daniel, when you come to do the ground testing on your main
Mhm.
at our house, bring your checklist with you.
Yeah, that's actually what we were planning. We were kind of gonna use it as a mock launch day.
Yep,
Yeah.
good plan.
Thanks, Elaine.
I also then wanted to make sure that you guys are familiar with the general schedule of the competition, when you should be there, what times, where you should be going.
Yeah, we're like all familiar with like the integrated master schedule that they had. So if I'm remembering correctly, it's like 9 to 5 on Monday is like the team registration, and I already put down our like time slots in the pre-registration that we wanted to do. And then Tuesday, I believe that's the podium and the poster session, and then launches happen like Wednesday on pretty much, and then Saturday is awards. If I'm missing anything, let me know. I think that's all I got.
Okay.
But
You got it all down. Did you guys know what day you're targeting to launch?
Wednesday or
Wednesday.
Thursday, the earlier the better is kind of what we're doing.
Good to hear. I definitely recommend that. It kind of for some context in sort of the environment that you go and launch and you're like, oh, it's a desert. It's like in the middle of an empty field. Like it's not that bad. Something about Spaceport is just different than every other launch site I've gone to. It is always so windy. It is always so brutal and hot. So some reminders is make sure you're dressing for the desert. If you're like me and you're from somewhere where there is no desert. I was from Minnesota. There's no deserts in Minnesota. Make sure you do a little research on what you should wear in the desert. It's generally recommended long pants and long sleeves just to protect yourself from the sun. Brimmed hats are a must. Bucket hats, cowboy hats, boating hats, anything like even just a baseball hat, I don't think is enough. You got to get that full sun protection. So many people get sunburned. So many people get some sort of like heat exhaustion out there. So I don't want that to happen to you guys. But the wind is really what makes it brutal, in my opinion. It's going to be windy when you're getting out there, setting up, and it's especially going to be windy in the afternoon. So make sure when you're going out there that you're getting out there early, you're prepared to launch early in the day, because it's very likely that they will have to stop launching in the afternoons just due to winds being too high.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. Thanks for all the very good advice. We're gonna go ahead and make sure that we're prepped for the desert, because I've never been to one.
Yeah, it's fun. I love the deserts now. Don't get me wrong. They're great, but you just got to be prepared. So do your research, bring about twice as much water than you think you need, maybe even a little bit more than that. And you'll have a great time.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Erica.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any other questions or closing remarks or anything along those lines?
No, I think I'm good here.
Heck, I have to. So, and Erica, it's nice to meet you, by the way, and I'll see you in New Mexico also.
Yeah.
I was just going to pass on that this team has been a pleasure to work with. They
You
take
bet.
suggestions. They argue a little bit, but that's fine. I mean, that's the whole name of the game, and they listen, and it's paid off, I think. They're very professional, organized. I'm really looking forward to them flying at Spaceport and experiencing the whole thing and getting rocketry UVA going again like it was a few years ago. So from a FOR point of view, excellent job, team. Looking forward to it. I think you guys got a good chance of maybe knocking out a couple things. So, like I said, it's been a pleasure. Elaine, do you have anything or?
Um, no, I agree with what you said. It has been a pleasure to work with all of you. I'm looking forward to continuing again next year with some, I'm sure with some change in the players because Daniel's graduating and I don't
Yeah.
know who else. But along the lines of what Erica was saying, I like to wear long sleeve fishing shirts. And this time of the year, you can get them at BJ's or Costco, wherever your parents have an account for pretty low cost. And if you're going to wear a school t-shirt, wear a fishing shirt underneath it.
Got it.
And you might want to consider gloves because the one place that other people have said that they always get sunburned because they never think about it is the back of their hands. So you'll notice that a lot of the volunteers out there wear gloves when they're checking rockets and putting things on the pad and stuff like that. And this is to keep them from getting skin cancer on the back of their hands. And you all know I'm a nurse, and so I think about things like that.
Got it.
So, sunscreen, water, a hat, and long clothes, and no sneakers out in the desert. No sneakers, no sandals, wear hiking boots.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely recommend the hiking boots as well. Even just get them somewhere like we have Sierra Tradings, like they have great deals on some good quality hiking boots. I have stepped on some nasty thorns in the desert before, but they didn't cause me any harm because I had those thick soles on my boots. And so you will
Very,
not
very
want to step
good.
on one of those if you do not have some good boots on.
And the last time I was there, which would have been, I guess, 2 years ago now, somebody, and not one of the students, one of the volunteers stepped on a thorny branch and it went right through the bottom of his sneaker. It was closed-toed, but it wasn't very sturdy when it came to sharp things. And there's critters, you know, snakes, scorpions, tarantulas. You just don't want to wear flip-flops.
No.
No, or bikinis or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, save the bikinis for back at the hotel, wherever you're staying.
Erica, well, she's been there, she knows.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
guarantee there will be a couple of students that will be running around bikinis. Yeah, I'll pass on, and I think I mentioned it to you before, but Esra is going to really tip the what I call the parking lot area. And that's where you're going to be set up. So we'll provide very large tents for you, and we'll provide you with 2 tables per team. So you don't have to bring tables, bring chairs, bring water, bring rocket, bring everything that the rocket needs extra. So it's you don't want to make a trip back to Virginia if you don't have to. So or even have to go to Home Depot. But I know people will because you can't go to like a launch without going to a Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, or somebody. It just seems to be that way. So,
Gotcha.
and also there will be food trucks there. I don't know what kind of food it's going to be, but the fact that it's going to be hot, you're going to hydrate real fast, or dehydrate real fast. Lots of water, lots of good drinks. You may want to think about going somewhere and bring lunch with you out the feed. Salads, that kind of stuff. Honestly, don't know about the actual food vendors. I don't think that's been set up yet. There will be crockery vendors there for parts if you need those. That kind of stuff. So. One thing Erica did mention was that when you register, you'll be a pager. And the pager is just like the restaurant type pager. Okay. So during the convention time, Monday and Tuesday, it also includes basically what Erica went through as far as the safety check goes, it's a double check basically. And be given a pager, and you'll be paged to come have your safety done. You don't have to stand in the hallway and twiddle your thumbs while you're waiting the next person to come. That pager will follow you out to the launch. You'll be able to be there so that when they're ready to do the safety on your rocket, the last and final safety, which is really just, did you install your sure pins? Have you put your bolts? You know, oh, did you remember to put the parachute in? You know, that kind of thing. You won't be taking your apart or anything like that. You'll be paged, bring rocket up, okay? You'll safety inspect it. It probably will be impounded at that point in time. You'll get to your tent and wait for a page to come up to go out to the pads, and then the pads take over from there. So just to give you a kind of a quick overview of what's going to go on. And it will be hot, it will be dusty, it will be windy. It might even rain, which is not
I
supposed to.
hope not.
But
Not again.
yeah, I hope not too. Yeah, I hope not too. But in fact, you know, that this time of year for them is their time. So hopefully, you know, hopefully the weather will stay normal this year, and it'll be windy and hot and that
Yeah.
wet. So
Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess there's one other thing I wanted to add on for kind of like Ben was talking more about details of what to expect when you're there. There will be a few sort of like student checklists or guides coming out, very different than the checklist that you're using to set up your rocket, but more of like what can you expect at the convention center. So this will include a map, it'll include a checklist of steps that you're going to be going through, and then you're going to be receiving a similar one for the actual launch site, particularly once you get out to the pads. And so those will be sent out in the coming weeks before the competition. So continue to keep a close eye on HeroX, closely review all those documents, print out anything you want to have at the launch site. Don't expect that you're going to have good self-service. You might not. But hopefully all of those will continue to help you guys. They're targeted for newer teams, and what can you expect exactly at the competition, so there are no weird surprises, and it all just flows hopefully a little bit smoother.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Ben and Elaine, for all the kinds words. It's been a pleasure working with y'all too. Another quick question I had was for the recording of this meeting, should we send it over to everybody here? So like Ben, Elaine, Professor McPherson, and you, Erica?
Yeah, if you want, you can send it to Ben and Elaine, kind of up to you guys on the team who wants to all have the meeting recording. I forget the exact email address that they're asking you to send it to. I think it's just the general Ezra email. There is instructions in that first email. When I first sent that email, I think to schedule your video review, I included a link to that just PDF document on what is the video safety review, what goes on. I believe there's instructions in there on who exactly you should send it to.
right.
And that was a
Awesome.
very nice email, Erica. I copied
Yeah.
it for my teams.
What I was going to say, what we need you to do is post the recorded video on a shareable drive.
Yeah,
And post a link to it on a shareable drive, and then we'll grab it from there. So
awesome.
yeah, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but if you have a question about where to send that email, just ping me or Elaine, and we'll get it to you, or go back and look at Erica's first email, which was excellent, by the way.
Awesome.
You know, well, yeah, and it contained all the information that everybody really needed, which was good. But with my teams, I'm saying, they say, where do we send it? Go back to email and start it.
Perfect. Sounds good.
So, okay.
I think
You're
we're
okay.
all
Look
go
forward
here.
to
Thank you
seeing you.
guys. This was great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erica. And thanks for taking the time out of your day to meet with us.
Absolutely. I look forward to seeing you guys at the competition.
Yep, I'll see you there.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Right.